This episode is brought to you by Quip, modern oral care delivered. For $10 off your first refill, go to tryquip.com/multiamory.
Imagine for a moment, if you will, if you never broke up with anybody. This means you would still be with the very first person that you ever dated. I certainly would not.
Turned my stomach.
Right?
If you're happy with the same old ways of dating,
If you enjoy sucking at communication,
And you have no desire to improve your romantic life, then our podcast might not be for you.
but if you want some out-of-the-box ideas to deepen your current relationships,
broaden your sexual horizons,
develop a better understanding of yourself,
or learn more about non-monogamy,
Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jase,
I'm Emily.
and I'm Dedeker.
and this is the Multiamory podcast.
Songs I know I did, forcing me to form myself to fit.
On this episode of the Multiamory podcast, we're talking about how to get over a relationship. This is yet another from the list of the top relationship search terms of 2017 from Google, is how to get over a relationship. And we realized it's something that we've had some other episodes about breakups, but we haven't quite addressed this exactly, about specifically getting over a relationship. And we did want to say that this is also, in this episode, we're going to focus on supporting your partners or your friends or other loved ones when they're going through a breakup as well, and helping them to get over that. So even if you're not currently trying to get over a relationship or expect to be doing that anytime soon, I know at least for me, as a human being who has friends, generally several times through the year at least, some of your friends or someone that you know or yourself is dealing with a breakup and having to get over a relationship. So I think this is something that is relevant to everyone in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. And bear in mind that when we say getting over a relationship or getting over an ex, for instance, that can look many different ways with many different results. I mean, I think the reason why we've talked about breakups but not really getting over things is because I think that when you're in the realm of non-traditional relationships, actually one of the good things is the fact that a relationship can change and transition and escalate or de-escalate without it having to be a harsh breakup where you never talk to them again and you nurse that wound for like years, which is usually how we expect to do it, I think, in more traditional relationships. However, just bear in mind that getting over a former partner can have many different end results. It could be a de-escalation, and the getting over process is kind of like getting over what the relationship used to look like and then adjusting to what it is now. It could be cutting someone out of your life, like that's okay too. Or it could be trying to create a healthy co-parenting relationship with someone that you are raising a child with, but who you don't have like a romantic or sexual connection with anymore. Whatever it ends up looking like, this kind of relationship transition can have a huge effect on your mind, on your body, on your emotions. And so it is something definitely to, regardless of what's actually happening in this transition, to make sure that you're caring for yourself and being proactive and intentional about going about it.
And like Dedeker said, it's totally fine to potentially stay friends with your ex after the appropriate amount of time for you to fully get over that, or for just some time to pass so that you're not super emotional about it or any of those things. And the three of us are obviously a great example of that.
Well, we're an example.
Yeah.
Well,
Might be blowing our horn
no, I
too
think-
much to say we're a great example.
I think we're pretty great.
I think we're a pretty awesome example because, again, I've talked to some friends of mine who hate like all of their exes and who don't understand like the concept of being friendly with an ex after a breakup, because a breakup means like it ended horribly. And that's the only reason that you would break up with someone and you never want to see them again.
Right.
And I think that the great thing about us, or just about anyone in general who can be a friend afterwards, is that like those people can still bring something amazing to your life, even if you're not necessarily in a romantic partnership with them.
Right. Actually, I was on the phone with a friend of mine just yesterday, and he was asking about so what is it like still working on the podcast with Emily, or like, what is it like between Jase and Emily? And he's like, oh, Jase is in the room. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. And I'm just like, life. It's like, it's fine. It's no big deal. Like, we're still the emotional triad raising the podcast baby. Like,
Right.
none of that's changed, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that said, though, and something that I think we'll get into a little bit more through this episode, is that in that transition from one type of a relationship that, like in Emily and my case, was living together as well as being in a romantic and sexual relationship with each other, that transitioning from that to not living together and not having a sexual relationship anymore, and also kind of sort of trying to figure out what level of like romance, friendship, whatever we had, that was a difficult thing, and that definitely took time. And that is something that's going to come up a lot through this episode, is just to understand that these things take time. Like Emily, we talked about this, and it seemed like it took us about 6 months to settle in. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that it took that amount of time again just to sort of let, I don't know, the really vulnerable like beginnings of leaving someone in that way, or at least like de-escalating something in that way, how vulnerable that time period is. And I think just like a solid 6 months of kind of nursing our wounds a little bit and like having some time apart, and then finally like coming back together and being like, okay, we can be cool now.
Yeah, but
and
y'all
it's
were
not
still
weird.
recording a podcast during that time.
Certainly,
No, I know we
yeah.
were. I mean, it's not like we had no, you know, nothing
no
ever.
connection
We
whatsoever.
never talked to each other or anything, but
Right.
but still, it wasn't as intense maybe as like we are now, where we're talking to each other like multiple times a week.
Exactly, yeah, and there wasn't the level of comfort that we had before or that we have now. You know, there is a transition period where it was just less comfortable because you're readjusting, because you might be hurt about it still, even if you think that it's the right thing to do. So anyway, I just want everyone to keep that in mind as well, whether it's for yourself or for someone you care about, is that just saying like, oh, but we both agreed we're going to be friends, that just that in itself doesn't make that easy, and it doesn't make that breakup not hurt necessarily. It's just to keep that in mind. And if it does hurt, that doesn't mean that it's doomed or that you can't ever be friends, but just give some respect to the fact that it's going to take some time.
But we'll get more into that in the meat of the episode.
Yes. And then the other thing we wanted to say is that it's also okay on the other extreme to not have any connection at all to an ex-partner, or to keep someone who's toxic or destructive or just hurtful to you out of your life entirely. That and then also that they don't even have to be a bad person, or like you don't have to have some jury decide that they're a toxic or destructive person in order to cut them off. You're not obligated to be friends with anybody, right? That this is your life and your choice. You don't have to justify why you don't want to have someone in your life. They could be a perfectly good person, but for you, they have a negative effect on your life. That's also perfectly okay to be honest with yourself about that and say, I just don't want them in my life. I don't have to tell everyone that they're a terrible person. I don't have to convince anyone that they're awful. I just don't need to have them in my life. That's also okay.
Yeah. So we have 4 specific pointers for you if you're listening and you're trying to get over or let go of a past relationship. Also, if you're trying to help a partner or a friend or a family member who may be also going through the same thing. So, Emily, what is our first one?
Okay, so the very first one is going to be cut off contact. So specifically, this can kind of delve into if you feel like it's time to sort of de-escalate, or if it's being awkward, if it's kind of getting awkward, like just trying to be friends, or if you realize that the relationship is toxic or volatile, then cut off contact for at least 10 days. Sort of see what it's like to be without that person for that period of time. Take 10 days off entirely from the relationship, and then after those 10 days, see where things lie.
Yeah, I always toss out the 10 days to clients because I think it's kind of like, it's kind of in a sweet spot as far as amount of time goes, where it's not so long that it's super scary. It's not like take 6 months of where you're not going to talk to them, you know, because people,
even 1 month.
Because, you know, when you're still attached to somebody, it can really be like, you know, that feels really scary, but it's also not so short that it's like, oh, just take 24 hours and then get right back into the negative cycles that you're already in. 10 days is a really good amount of time for being able to connect to yourself, to see who it is that you are when you're not talking to this person, when you're not staying connected to this person, what feelings come up, good, bad, in between, things like that. And this does include social media as well. I have a lot of clients who will do the 10-day thing, but spend the entire 10 days just creeping on their partner's social media.
Yeah, right.
That does nothing good.
And trying to interpret, like, what does that mean? What does this mean? How could they do this? Why would they do that? Oh my goodness, and it just makes it worse. So it does include social media. And I know a lot of people get really hesitant because they think, oh, I should be above that. I shouldn't, I don't want to come across as the petty ex who needs to block you. And like, if you need to just very simply say to this person, hey, like, in this period of us not contacting each other, I'm going to disconnect on social media. And at the end of that time, if we want to reconnect, then we can. So that you don't come across as petty, then do that. But actually do it. Actually cut yourself off from their social media. Like, actually do as much as you can to get that psychological distance away.
Yes, and part of that is also don't rely on just your willpower alone to do that. That actually taking the initiative to either hide their posts on Facebook or block them, and of course there's other social media as well, maybe unfollow them on Snapchat or like whatever it is, right? Take those steps to do it, because you might think right now while you're listening to this episode, oh yeah, I just won't check their stuff. It'll be fine. Or if I need to, that's fine, but I don't want to, block them. I'll be fine. And then when it's later in the evening, especially if you've had a drink or you're tired, right? If you're in any kind of, quote, weakened state, your ability to have willpower, and this is something that's scientifically proven, this isn't just some mumbo jumbo I'm throwing out here, your ability to make good decisions goes down. Your ability to do that does wear out during the day. And so that's when you're going to end up at 2 a.m. checking their social media and especially then also getting more upset about it. So really, like, take those proactive steps and say, I'm going to do this. Maybe even put a reminder in your calendar for 10 days from now to unblock them if you want. But like actually take that step instead of just relying on willpower alone to do it.
It's like that song, Need You Now. Do you remember that song? We sang that, Jase.
Yeah, we sang that at karaoke.
That's like exactly what this is.
Is it about Snapchat?
No.
That'd be great.
It's a country song, so it's about telephone calls.
Right. Yes, I know that song.
Yeah, but they say, like, I said I wouldn't call, but I'm a little drunk and I need you now. Yeah,
that's right.
Kinda...
Why do you guys sing that?
I don't know. And it's fun to like duet too.
I mean, it's beautiful. Whenever I've heard y'all sing it, it's beautiful, but it is kind of a downer.
It is surprisingly hard to find duets in general. I think they're a little harder to find duets, especially ones that have like good content, because they're either like super, I think sort of unhealthy ideas of what romance is, or they tend to be something like this that's tend to be about fairly unhealthy relationships.
Like codependent relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, totally. Well, it's a country song. What do you expect? Sorry,
but all of them though, they're all like that.
It's not just country songs, like any popular songs.
That's true.
I actually, you know what? I'm going to make a bold statement right now. I would actually say, as a genre, I think country probably has more examples of some healthy relationship songs than a lot of other genres. Yeah.
Maybe you're right.
Real quick question. Do you want to take a 5-minute detour to give a mini lecture on which songs you think?
No, but I think that country has a precedence for because country songs tend to be a little less like angst ridden. Like a lot of other like pop and rock songs are. It's sort of like, I'm suffering so much, or I'm so like in pain, I'm going to sing this. That country does have those sorts of songs, but often there's sort of a more matter-of-fact approach to the lyrics in talking about a subject, and I think that actually leads to a lot of songs with at least a broader range of looking at what romance can be, and not to say that all of them are great by any stretch, because I'd say the music industry in general is full of terrible relationship models. But I would actually say, Emily, that I'd say country is actually probably a better genre than most in terms of finding some good examples.
Well, folks, you heard it here
at
first.
At least it puts itself out there. What, Dedeker?
Can I bring us back?
Yes, please.
Yes,
okay.
you may.
Anyway, so this whole 10-day thing, people get really resistant to this, but remember, like, if you were really meant to stay connected in some way, whether that's you were meant to continue the relationship or meant to stay friends or meant to have each other in each other's lives, then that's going to last through 10 days of no contact. If everything falls apart after 10 days of no contact and like there's just no way of salvaging it, then clearly
Right.
there was not a good foundation there to begin with. And so, and I think that's probably why people are resistant to it, is because on
Part
a
of
certain
them
level they
thinks it
know
will.
that if we're not talking to each other for 10 days, like, this is not going to
We're
survive
fucked.
that. Yeah.
Well, or I think even realizing for themselves, and this can be a good thing for supporting a friend who's going through this, is they might be afraid to do it because they realize that if they're away from this person for 10 days, they're going to realize they don't need them so badly.
I mean, possibly.
And but I mean, like, no, I mean that they themselves will realize they don't need this other person so badly, which will make it clear to them that they do need to end that relationship. I think that idea scares a lot of people.
I think more people get afraid of the opposite. I think more people get afraid of, like, if my partner's away from me for 10 days, they're going to realize that they don't need me.
Certainly. I'm just
And
saying,
I think that's more
this
the
happens.
acute thing.
I think it happens the other way around more than you think. So there.
Well, them's fighting words.
I know, right?
So we just wanted to say real quick that jumping right into let's just be friends may just kind of make the sex hotter for a while, but not necessarily like fix a problem. Or also, again, like we said before, you should probably take some time before becoming friends, or otherwise you may just like start becoming friends and then just keep having sex and keep doing your same toxic things.
That's the thing
in your
is
relationship.
that it's like as soon as you know you're not supposed to be having sex at this time, either like, oh, we're just friends or we're taking a break, like it is going to make the sex real hot for maybe like a week or two because of the fact that you know you're not supposed to be doing it.
I've definitely been there, done that.
Oh, I've been there, done that too.
For sure. Yeah. No question.
We're all like,
So again, give yourself that time. If you actually want to be just friends, if that actually is your MO, take that time, do it for yourself so that you can reconnect to yourself at the very least. And if you make it through, I promise you, you're going to be a lot better because of it.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't make it through, that's for the best. that relationship didn't last. You know what I mean? If that relationship doesn't last the 10 days, even as friends, that's for the best.
Yes.
You dodged a bullet there.
You dodged a bullet. Yeah. Okay, what's our next one?
I think this is you.
Oh, it is me. Oh my goodness. Okay, yes. The next one is to find therapy of some kind. It can be professional one-on-one therapy, with an actual licensed psychotherapist or with a coach or some other kind of professional. Ideally, if you're in a non-traditional relationship, good to find somebody who's friendly or knowledgeable about those sort of things as much as you can. But of course, we understand that therapy is not always available or accessible or affordable to everybody. It is definitely a privilege. But that doesn't mean that you're just screwed in this arena. There are many, many alternative options.
Right. I mean, the first of those is some kind of a group therapy. Now, this could be still professional. This could be a group therapy that you pay for, or this could be, some kind of a processing group or a discussion group if it lends itself toward that kind of support. Yeah. And this could be something that you do in person, or this could be something that you do online, such as, there's lots of free Facebook groups out there in addition to our Multiamory Patreon group. If you're a Patreon supporter, a lot of people go there for support. This is something that I found at some polyamory discussions, if you can find those, that sometimes there will be either a certain section of the talk or maybe some time afterwards specifically for people who are seeking support or want to share more personal things rather than just kind of intellectual discussion about polyamory. That's one option. If you're not in a polyamorous relationship, if it is more monogamous, it's much easier to find support groups for that. But either way, that is really important to find people that you can talk to openly about it who are going to, support you in that, whether they're strangers or friends or whatever.
Yeah, I have a friend who's in therapy and in group therapy. She does a little of both, so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Another way is to find a therapeutic activity, something like that you can create with your hands or an artistic expression or creative writing. I personally find yoga or exercising to be insanely therapeutic because it really takes you outside of your mind and puts you into your body in some way and kind of lets you let go. Meditation, which we didn't even put in here, but that's another form of therapy as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think when I was researching this topic, I found someone who kind of said, like, instead of paying like $200, $300, $400 for a month of therapy, like I spent $100 on buying a canvas and a bunch of brushes and paint, and then that was my therapy. Like,
That's
but I think
awesome.
the difference there being that she very intentionally went out and did something in order to prep for that. And I think that can be very helpful. Like, this can be a time, I think, to pick up a new creative activity as well, like something to really take your mind and your focus off of it, and something that you can kind of pour those emotions into, I think is also really helpful.
Yeah, I've found that this also really varies for me, that I've had times where in a certain breakup or getting over something difficult, that, you know, something calm like meditation or something like writing has been really helpful. But in other situations, especially if emotionally for me, I was a lot more like angry about it, then something like going and working out or doing something very physical was much more beneficial for me, whereas other times that wasn't as helpful. So keep in mind too, it's not just like, oh, I'll just Google this real quick, as apparently a lot of people have in 2017. I'll just Google this real quick, and they say like, go, you know, run, like, or go on hikes. Like, okay, I'll do that. Oh, it didn't work. This is bullshit. But like, find the activity that's right for you, right? And it might be
one
different.
size does not fit all.
Right. It might be different from day to day, and just don't be afraid to really like check in with yourself and see what might help. Is it that I feel really pent up physically, I need to go get this out, or is it more I need to occupy my mind, right?
And bear in mind that your partners and your friends and your family members, they can help with this. You know, if you need to vent, if you need to express, if you need to verbally process, you know, it can be great to go to someone that you trust or to go to a supportive partner in order to talk about these things, but just be mindful of what emotional labor is being given and received, because basically it's, you know, they can be helpful, but only up to a certain point, because you also don't want to be just completely draining your partner or your friends or your family members, making them into your therapist and not paying them, or not, you know, or not compensating, or not like kind of, you know, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, not returning the favor in any kind of way. Just be mindful of the fact that emotional labor is a thing. Go listen to our episode on emotional labor. And don't be hesitant to like open up to your partners or friends or family members, but just be aware that that is a resource that isn't necessarily a bottomless well.
Certainly. Yeah. And then also, I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the group therapy, but the Multiamory patron group has a lot of this kind of stuff, actually, because, you know, when you have a group of, you know, a couple hundred people, breakups are going to happen, unfortunately, but it's really great to have a space where people can share about that and say specifically, you know, I'm looking for support on this, or I'm looking for advice or other people's experiences or ideas. To have a space where you can talk about that, where someone isn't going to jump to, oh, well, that's what happens when you're polyamorous, or that's what happens when you try to do any kind of non-traditional relationship. See, instead of trying to like essentially blame you for it or blame your choices for that, it's just a place that you can share where people are like, I'm concerned about how you feel, and giving you that kind of support first and foremost, rather than trying to sort of pathologize your relationships or something like that.
Right.
So that's a fantastic resource that a lot of people do take advantage of in that Multiamory Patreon only Facebook group, for the people there.
And I think also, I know I've seen a number of posts in that group of people just sharing, like, not even necessarily getting into the nitty-gritty details of what happened, but just kind of giving a really simple version of what happened and just saying, I'm just hurting, like, and I just need support, and that's it, you know, and being able, again, like Jase was saying, to get people reaching out with that support and understanding and relating and virtual hugs without it being about, well, we're gonna dissect why you shouldn't have done what you did or whatever.
So with that, we're going to talk real quick about how you can support our show to help us keep doing this. And the best way to do that is to become a supporter on Patreon, which will get you access to things like that private Facebook group. If you go to patreon.com/multiamory, that's how you can find our Patreon page. And you can pledge at many different levels. At $5 a month, you get access to that private Facebook group. At $7 a month, you get that. Plus, you get ad-free versions of our episodes, and you get them a day early. Plus, we also have started releasing a few little things of bonus content that are available to all of our levels of Patreon supporters. Little bonus audio recordings, little previews about things and events that are coming up this year, stuff like that. So if you want to become one of our supporters, there you can go to patreon.com/multiamory and become one of our patrons there. We'd love to have you in the community and are looking forward to meeting you there. Mm-hmm. Or if you're already a Patreon supporter or you don't want to contribute something monthly, we also have some fun merch that you can buy, which you can find at multiamory.com/store. We've got shirts and bags and phone covers and mugs and things like this. And we specifically designed them so that some of the items, have our logo and say Multiamory on it, but other ones just have the logo and don't say Multiamory. And we did that specifically so if you're someone who isn't out about being polyamorous and you worry that, if someone saw Multiamory, they're going to ask too many questions, or, I don't want people to know this about me who I haven't talked to about it. If it's just the logo, though, if they're part of the cool group of people who listen to Multiamory, they'll be like, hey, is that a podcast logo on your shirt? And then you're like, hey, I just met someone.
Or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, just that you're not forced into that conversation, or they might be like, oh, what's that? You're like, oh, it's a cool logo that I found, right?
Nothing.
So anyway, it gives you a little code way to
suss out other Multiamory fans.
Exactly, without having to have it printed in text on a shirt.
Nice.
Yeah. And for all of you lovely people out there who have already done this, we salute you and thank you, who have written us a beautiful review on iTunes or Stitcher. And if you haven't, if you just take 5 minutes and go to either iTunes or Stitcher and write us a review, it will make us oh so happy. And in addition, it will put us higher in search results when people are looking for polyamory podcasts or relationship podcasts or sexuality podcasts. Our great reviews will launch us higher to the top of the list when somebody searches for that. So we really, really appreciate it. Just go to either of those places and write us a quick, hopefully 5-star review if you love our work.
Yeah, I was actually just reading recently how something like watching a movie or listening to a podcast takes a number of times of being exposed to it by someone recommending it to you. And doing a review is essentially that, to commit the time to listen to a podcast, you usually have to hear about it a few times and have a few people recommend it. So by writing a review, people are able to come and see what you've said about it. That might push them over the edge to be like, yeah, all right, I'll give it a listen and see what I think. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah. And then the last thing that you can do is you can check out this week's sponsor, which is Quip. So if you go to tryquip.com/multiamory, you'll get $10 off your first toothbrush replacement head. So I should explain what Quip is if you don't know already. Quip is this really fantastic electric toothbrush, but it runs on a battery. It's very, very slim. You can take it traveling. It's not bulky like a normal Sonicare, things like that. It doesn't need to plug in. And it's really, really, really inexpensive. Like under $30 essentially to get one. And they also include free replacement heads for it every 3 months, which is the interval that you're supposed to change them at.
Right. Well, you get one free one with our offer,
right,
which is tryquip.com/multiamory.
Yes. All three of us have one and we love it. I just got one for my mom for her birthday. It'd be funny if I got one for her for my birthday. I got one for her birthday. She absolutely loves it.
It just feels so good in my mouth.
It feels real good in one's mouth, and it looks real good. And I feel really stylish and smart when I brush my teeth, which I never have in my entire life. So if you're craving that experience, definitely go check it out. And then also the part that we like, of course, is that whenever you make an order on Quip, then they send a little bit of a kickback to us.
Yeah.
And it helps, continue keeping the show going.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your support and for having beautiful teeth. And with that, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is, we called this Be a Negative Nancy. So this one I think is surprising to a lot of people, that we would put this, something about being negative. But essentially what this is about remembering after you have broken up or you've ended a relationship, remembering why you did that, why you ended that relationship, or why that relationship ended, if it was mutual or whatever. Because when we do romanticize our past relationships that way, it can lead us to perhaps, doing the kind of like yo-yo dating thing that I'm sure all of us have some friends who've done this, where they're just constantly on again, off again. And you're just like, God, you guys are awful for each other. You're always miserable when you're together. I mean, you're happy for the first little bit when you get back together, but then it's shitty again. And not only that you're kind of together and not together, but other people will see, gosh, like this isn't, like you're not being productive in your life. You're constantly thinking about whether this is on again or off again, or if you should break up again or whatever. That often that can come because our human memories are not very good. Some are more not good than others, speaking for myself maybe. But human memory is very flawed. And so actually doing concrete reminders for yourself, and really remembering the fact that this ended for a reason, and just because I'm lonely doesn't mean that I should still be in that relationship.
Yeah, and some of those boundaries or deal breakers might be good things to remember, or just red flags that happened in your relationship, just violations of any kind. Again, if you're feeling like, well, maybe it wasn't that bad, or if you're trying to figure out like, well, should I really break up with this person? I mean, if there's a consistent thing that's occurring in this relationship, like a deal breaker or like a red flag or anything, just huge differences in what your boundaries are or what your morals or viewpoints on the world are even, then it might be a good idea to remember those things and be concrete about them, and maybe not staying in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of being concrete, it can be good to actually write these things out. Like actually have a list of reasons why the relationship didn't work out, or red flags that you missed early on. Sex therapist Amy Levine actually recommends, have that list in plain sight somewhere, like keep it on your phone or put it next to your computer if you're always on Facebook and about to message your ex, or check out your ex's social media or something like that. And I mean, if it has to get extreme, then make it extreme. Like if you need to change the contact name in your phone of your ex to something specific, like this person called me a bitch in front of my friends, then do that, so that when you pull up your ex's like text messages to start messaging them, then you see that and you're like, right, that was a thing that happened. And I mean, I feel so torn about this one, because usually my MO in life is like, don't dwell on the negative and dwell on like the positives and move on, but if you're at a point where you're finding yourself just like miserable and constantly drawn back to wanting to be back in this relationship or back with this ex who is not good for you, don't be afraid to dwell on the negative things. And
if there's a reoccurring offense, then for sure.
And to also, on top of that, congratulate yourself for not being exposed to those negative things anymore. Well, you can kind of wrap it up in that too.
I think that's the great part actually about writing it down, is that I feel like you actually then don't have to think about it so much. And instead it's there, like that idea of putting it in their contacts or somewhere that is in a place where you might message them or start thinking like, oh, maybe I should get back together with them. Like maybe put it on a Post-it note on a photo of them that you have in your room, or like whatever it is, can actually help you to not have to be dwelling on that all the time. And it's not like you have to constantly walk around in a state of being mad at them or upset with them to keep yourself from dating them again. But it's still there at the important times to remind you to be like, oh, right, yes, go me. Yeah. I'm not in that situation anymore.
I know what I did once. I don't remember if this was with an ex or with someone I had a falling out with. And this was when I had a desktop computer, and so I was going to Facebook and like social media more often through my desktop. That Chrome had some kind of setting where when you type in a URL, you can have it automatically redirect to a different one. Oh, and so, or when you click on a particular URL. And so I set it so that if I ever went to that person's social media, it would redirect me to like Tiny Buddha, which is like a Buddhist like Zen blog.
Oh, wow. That's really smart.
But you could either do that, or you could have it set so that it redirects you like to a Google Doc where you have a list of all those things.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if you could, I'm sure there's some way you could do that in the mobile version as well to kind of cover yourself on all bases. But I don't know, for me it really helped because I would be like cranky and like, or sad, or like want to go look at their social media, and then it would redirect me to the blog, and for a couple seconds I'd be like, this is dumb, but then I'd be like, no, but this is right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the mobile app you can't do something quite like that, unfortunately, because it's all within the app instead of through a browser.
Right.
But I do think this is potentially a good chance for, unfollowing someone at least, to remove that temptation of like seeing their posts that they're putting on social media, even if you're not going to block them entirely, because maybe you still are cordial sometimes, or you need to coordinate about your children or about something financial or whatever. That's fine, but kind of taking away some of those temptations to just reminisce about that relationship or think about it or wish that you still had it, things like that. I think this one's also great if you're the friend who's supporting somebody through a breakup. That this technique, especially if you feel like you're the one who constantly has to like feel like shaking them and be like, no, remember that they were a jerk to you. Like, you don't want to be back in that relationship. If you're feeling like you're the one having to do that all the time, perhaps you could be the one to suggest this idea of like, hey,
I like that.
Let me see their contact in your phone real quick. Just make a quick list in here of all of these reasons why you're not with them.
Yeah.
Could be a way to save yourself a little bit of emotional labor.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Now let's move on to our last one.
Yeah, so the last one is going to be get outside of yourself. So you've grieved, you've had a lot of time to yourself maybe, you've had time to kind of get over the death of this relationship or just the moving on from this relationship to something else entirely. But after that has happened, go out and be social. Maybe connect to family or friends or other partners, or just like go be in a group of people, go to a meetup group, anything. Go out dancing, something. Yeah, just be social and get outside of yourself again.
Yeah, just something to get yourself outside of your own head and outside of your own memories, because that's when we can have those moments of being much more vulnerable, right? It's like when we're by ourselves and we're feeling lonely and we're feeling sad and we're poring over the good memories of the relationship and how it could have gone differently and what I could have done differently, and just, of course, take care of yourself. And of course, you're going to go through a period where maybe like you are grieving and you are mourning, and like let yourself have those emotions, but also, don't be afraid to let yourself go out and just focus on somebody else and on something else. I'm going to bring up again my pay it forward technique.
TM.
Thank you for backing me up on that one. The technique of, in the moments that you are feeling sad or feeling lonely or feeling like you're not being loved, go love on somebody. Like, send someone a text message.
Clarify what that means.
Okay, fine. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be going on Tinder and finding a hookup. What I mean is like, go through your phone, message someone you haven't messaged in a while, family member, friend, or another partner, and just send them something positive and true about them, or just ask them, hey, I've been thinking about you and want to know how you're doing. Just find some way to kind of do something very small to try to brighten somebody else's day, or to spark a little bit of a connection with someone else who's in your life already. Again, just for that purpose of getting you outside of yourself and getting you into a mode of wanting to give to somebody rather than focusing on the things that you're not receiving.
Yeah, that's great.
And kind of in I guess a slightly similar way, is to realize that there might be other ways of getting your needs met too. This is something that comes up a lot. Something that I realize happens if I'm feeling like that feeling of I'm desperate to find somebody to date. And I know that after a breakup, this can be especially hard if you're feeling alone more of the time, feeling this kind of like, I need to date, right? This sense of need rather than just I want to. And that a lot of times we can help that by getting our needs met in other ways. And some ways to do this would be something like, for example, if it's touch that you need, finding a cuddle party. I know that some people might be like, I don't know, that seems weird. Sure, it might not be for you. Maybe you could find a friend who's okay with cuddling, right?
Yeah.
But there are also, even if you don't know anyone in your town, you might be able to go on meetup.com and find a cuddle party nearby, even if you have to drive a little ways to get to it. Or if it's more sexual, you could find a sex party in your area, right? That these are also
or some
ways,
kind of kink or a dungeon or something,
right? Some way of getting those needs met. Or if it's more just social time, something like finding a group activity, again through Meetup or through Facebook events, or there's lots of other sort of social groups in most major cities,
or just
and
get
even
your
a lot of
friends
smaller
together.
ones. Right, or put your own together. Just create the activity that be the activity you want to see in the world. Right.
I don't know if that translates.
Right. Say, hey, I'm putting together a hiking thing or a picnic or a board game day or whatever it is. Right. To realize that you can be proactive about getting some of these needs met.
And if you are in a situation where you do have multiple partners, and so maybe you're trying to get over a particular ex, but you're also still trying to maintain good relationships with other partners, let yourself use that freed up time and energy that you were giving to this other person. And maybe it was a lot of energy that you were giving toward a toxic relationship or something like that. And just see like, what are the ways that you can kind of use that time and energy that's been freed up to invest more in each of your other relationships, even if it's just a little bit. Again, this is going to be after you've taken time to mourn and like to take care of yourself, but then it can be really, I know I've at least found in my own life that it's amazing, like once you're no longer in a relationship that's taking up a lot of your emotional energy and emotional labor just to keep it afloat, how much you'll find yourself able to give to your other relationships once that's out of the picture. It really is quite amazing.
I think it's important to focus on the wording of this one too, because it's about, realizing this time and energy that you have more that you can give to your relationships, in similar to the pay it forward technique, that I think after a breakup for polyamorous people, there can be a strong temptation to sort of demand more from your other partners as well, to try to get them to fill that gap.
That's true.
And this is a way of kind of turning that around, because they're not magically going to have more time now just because you had a breakup, right? Maybe they will, but usually that's not how it works. However, if you're the one who has more time and energy, you could find ways for you to give more to those relationships rather than focusing on wishing you got more from them now to fill that void.
Yeah, definitely.
So Jase kind of talked a couple sections ago about maybe not jumping right into a new relationship, but I will challenge that in saying that perhaps one could just go out on a date for the sake of going out on a date, just to be like, hey, I want to remember that I'm desirable and that I'm an interesting, awesome person. I, for one, love going on first dates. I think they're awesome. It's really like fun to sort of walk into a place not knowing who you're going to find, and then, hey, like I get to be the best version of me for this, small period of time, and that's really awesome. So it might be a good thing. Just, be cautious because you're definitely going to be in a vulnerable state during this time. But if you want to just have, a good initial date with someone, then go for it.
Yeah, I know for a long time, like Jase, you and I have talked about this concept of like, what would it be like if you approach someone like online, for instance, with the caveat of like, we're just going to go on a first date and that's going to be it.
Right.
And like, as in, not as in like we're obligated to have sex or anything like that, like whatsoever, like no expectations, like this is just gonna be a first date just for the sake of having a first date and that's it. I've always been really curious. I haven't tried that either. I've been really curious about that, because that's the thing, is that it can be it can be a great technique for getting you outside of yourself and getting you focused on another person. But especially if it's in this context of there being no expectations and you're not trying to make it into anything, and you're not trying to use this person to like fix you or to make you feel better. Like it literally is just to get outside and connect, and then that's it. And if I come away with a new friend, that's great. And if I don't, that's also great and fine. I'm really intrigued by the idea of doing that. Of course, like it can be tricky, and it could, this is also how people sometimes get themselves into trouble, kind of throwing themselves into something when they're trying to expect this other person to fix them or to make everything better and things like that. But
yeah,
if you can do it without that expectation, though, I think that it could be a really cool thing. Just to remember, like, hey, you're awesome, and being able to like see yourself through somebody else's eyes, I think is really empowering.
Yeah.
I think being able to approach that from a place of not like needing something from them is what can make that really powerful. Like we were talking about earlier about getting your needs met in other ways, of not coming into a date being like, God, I really need this to at least end up in some cuddling, right? Or like finding some ways to meet that, so you're not right. So you're not going into the date with this sense of kind of desperation and need, but at the same time still realizing, this date can be a great opportunity to, show off the best parts of myself and get to meet someone new.
Right.
And so I will yes and to Emily's controversial idea here. And this is about just getting into another relationship. And I wanted to bring this up because we found a research study about rebound relationships showing that they actually have a lot of positive effects, such as boosted confidence, by giving you new emotions and thoughts to focus on instead of past negativity, etc. And that basically this study kind of showed that a lot of the sort of common wisdom about rebound relationships, meaning, getting into another relationship shortly after another one. I think that 6 months was their window. I forget what it was exactly. Yeah. People say, oh, don't do it. It's just going to be bad. Like those are always going to break up. And this study actually showed that that's not necessarily the case.
Well, I think the important thing to distinguish here is that the study didn't show like, oh no, rebound relationships, like they're more likely to succeed and last forever. Like it didn't show that. It more showed that actually the psychological impact was actually quite positive. I think even if the relationship itself didn't last, for a really long time. And I think that's the important distinction to make there.
Well, it goes along with something we talk about a lot on this show, of the idea that what makes a relationship good isn't just how long it lasts.
Right. So I think if you look at rebound relationships in that way, like if you end up in another relationship, not coming to it with the expectation of like, okay, I'm just going to hop onto my next soulmate, right? But understanding that, just understanding that may not necessarily be the case. But my favorite part was the name of the article that published the study, and it was called "Too Fast, Too Soon?" ? An empirical investigation into rebound relationships.
Yeah, it's a really good title.
Yeah.
So funny.
So from their conclusion, this is a quote from that. It says, contrary to what is commonly believed about the need for a waiting period following the end of a relationship, we found that beginning a new relationship quickly after a breakup seemed to have positive consequences. So again, not about even the quality of that relationship necessarily, but just that it has positive psychological, emotional consequences.
Like that it did help people get over their initial breakup and kind of come out the other side feeling a lot better.
Yeah.
Than if they hadn't.
But this specific study is also not necessarily about just hooking up. It's actually about dating and entering into a relationship with somebody new. And then this is interesting. People were more insecurely attached in their original, or people who were more insecurely attached in their original relationship ended up having the greatest boost of confidence and psychological well-being in their rebound relationship. I wonder why that is.
I think it's especially interesting because, when you two recorded that episode about attachment styles, that one of the sort of controversial things in that field is, is your attachment style something you're stuck with, or is it something that you can change or that can change over time? And I think this is interesting that they showed specifically that people who had, reported a more insecure attachment style with this previous relationship had the greatest improvement in this new relationship. So that is interesting evidence to show that circumstances also play a lot of role in attachment styles. It's not just something that you're stuck with in your life forever.
Maybe they just broke that habit of the old relationship and therefore they're better off in this new one. I don't know.
I mean, quite possibly, like some of the theories in the study itself that they tossed out is they think that because like if someone's in a relationship and they're insecurely attached and part of it is because they're wondering whether or not the relationship is going to end, that can fuel some of that insecurity. But if this person gets through that breakup and there's no longer that question of like, is it going to end? Like it has ended,
Right.
Or it's true, this person is leaving you, that it's kind of like you take out that particular insecurity and maybe that leaves you more open to being able to embrace like the positivity that comes in reconnecting to someone new. That was one of their theories, but
yeah, I mean, I think also just that if it's that feeling that I think many of us can relate to of like, I don't know how I'll get by if this relationship ended and then it ends and you didn't, right? You're still around. You didn't die. You're still here. That even that is like, oh, okay. Maybe I didn't need to worry quite so much about that.
Oh, we cool.
Yeah. As always, just proceed with caution if you're hopping into a rebound relationship. Just always check in with what your expectations are. And as we've said before about any time that you're in NRE or new relationship energy or limerence or, whatever it is you want to call that big rush of passionate emotions and hormones that get all cooked up in your brain when you're first falling in love with someone new, don't sign anything in the first year.
Really?
It's simple. Don't
Seriously?
really. Don't
get married.
Don't get married. Don't sign a marriage contract. Don't sign a lease together. Yeah. Don't even sign a contract for the same cell phone plan. Don't buy a house together. Like
don't buy a TV together.
Don't adopt. I was going to say adopt an animal, but
don't adopt an animal or a child.
Or a child. Right.
Don't adopt a child together.
Right. Don't open a bank account together. Just give that first year some time. Right. If this really is the true love that you think it is, you're still going to be in love.
Yeah, there'll be time for you to do all those things.
Just don't
sign anything when you're still in NRE.
Yeah, exactly. I might even argue longer than a year, but we'll be generous and we'll give you a year.
That's still very generous.
Cool. So we wanted to do a quick little recap here of what we talked about. And so the first thing is in getting over a breakup is to create some space to figure things out and how to, reconnect with yourself. And to remember that if a relationship, like if you're trying to stay friends, if this relationship can't survive 10 days apart, then it's not one worth saving.
Secondly, find support. And that can mean professional support, friends or family, or just something that you do on your own that's awesome and fun.
Yeah.
And enlightening.
And remember to be a negative Nancy. Remember that you broke up for a reason. You can keep a list or a reference or some kind of document that you've written down to remind yourself of why you're no longer with this person if you find yourself starting to romanticize or idealize the relationship or this particular partner.
Also get your focus outside yourself. So that means hobbies, hang out with friends, go to social events, or even start dating again.
Yeah. So nobody likes having to go through a breakup, but it is an incredibly important part of the dating process. I just have a little exercise for both of you here and all of our listeners at home. Imagine for a moment, if you will, if you never broke up with anybody, this means you would still be with the very first person that you ever dated.
Jeez.
I certainly would not.
That turned my stomach.
Right? I certainly would not want that. And I think that so often, we're taught that dating is one thing and all the techniques and all the advice about dating is about how to make it last, how to get them to love you the most, how to get them to never want to leave you, blah, blah, blah. And then breakups are kind of seen as this but if everything fails and falls apart, then I guess you can break up. And I actually would make the argument that I think ending relationships is an equally important part of the dating process to starting relationships because of exactly what I said, right? We all have to do it. There's a very rare few people out there who stay with and are happy with, that's a big caveat there, who stay with and are happy with the very first person that they ever have a romantic relationship with. So just keep that in mind, that whether you're going through this or your friend is going through this isn't a failure. This is just a natural part of dating. It's an important part, and it gives you opportunities to improve and have better relationships and get more clear on what it is that you want in your life.
Yeah.
Going clear.
What?
That was
a Scientology thing?
Yes.
Gosh darn it.
Jeez. Oh God.
Sorry, I don't mean that. I just mean get clear on yourself.
Oh man.
Okay, well
with that,
if you'd like to have your question or comment played on the show, you can call us at 678-MULTI-05. And you can leave us a voicemail, or you can send us an audio message at the Multiamory Facebook page. You can email us at info@multiamory.com, or you can send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. To support our show and to join our private Facebook community, go to patreon.com/multiamory. Multiamory is created and produced by Emily Matlack, Jase Lindgren, and me, Dedeker Winston. Our episodes are edited by Mauricio. Our social media wizard is Will McMillan. Our theme song is Forms I Know I Did by Josh and Anand from the Fractal Cave EP. The full transcript is available on this episode's page on multiamory.com.
Hey, this is Andrew Gurza, Disability Awareness Consultant, crippled content creator, and host of Disability After Dark, the podcast to shine a bright light on sex and disability. and you're listening to a Swing Set podcast at swingset.fm.